computer audio. You. Boom. All right. Let's see here. That was not my password. Coming in. All spotlight here. Welcome to Methods class. We're gonna be having some fun today. Let's see here. I still had a typo in my password. Try it one more time. Let's see here. Oh, wrong way. Hello. Ah, there I am. Ah, it's a class. If I It's got 5 minutes. Get this up and rolling. Do, do, do. Do, 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 do. Do, do, do. And there it goes there. Let's save any of my stuff. Now this folder is empty. All right, so I have to download everything again. Ah, I need to go get some water. How are you doing today? Not too shabby. Go. Go down. Here. Boom. Let's save it. All right. And look at green mail because it'll be emailed to myself. Yes, that's me. All right, over here. Boom. I'm going to go from me to me as an attachment. Ah, got that. We'll go back in. Download. So here, it's all. Boom. Cool. And this. And we got 2 minutes. I'm going to run down the hall. I will be right back. Small walk on that.
A 90, thankfully.
Heck yeah.
The essay questions carried
Yeah.
because they were just writing the books like you said.
Yeah, shut up. That same. That's what carried me. I got an 87.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna look up this like this definition, and I can see where I can find it.
Mhm. And then it was almost like word for
Yeah.
word. You just like
So I was so thankful for that.
me too. I was like, because I was worried if I missed those essay questions, I was like, this is gonna tank my grade.
Yeah, especially because it was a late midterm.
Mhm.
Have you been doing? Have you actually been doing research? Are we doing a paper right now or no? Because I'm so confused on that part.
Yeah, I don't know.
'Cause I haven't touched that thing since we did it.
Same. I haven't either. Because he made the comment that he was gonna like look over it and like give us feedback on it, and he still had.
And he takes a good weeks to give feedback.
Yeah.
He's gonna be the end of the semester when he gets feedback.
Right. And then he's gonna be like, oh, by the way, this is due.
Oh my god, I'm gonna cry.
I'll be like, oh, by the way, here's the assignment 2 unedited.
Unedited.
You can have it.
He's like, yeah, he's been showing us how to use that, but I don't know.
I don't know. It just kind of, I actually lost things. It's like, where are we,
Mhm.
what are you, what are we learning? What are you teaching?
Mhm. Feels so empty since everyone goes online now.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the same thing. And I was thinking about going get something to eat before my next class and just zooming.
Mhm.
And then if I would have done that, you would have been the only one in here.
Oh man, it's what I do for physical law class. It's at 9. I'll go on the show right with that.
Welcome to class. All right, so last time I started showing you how to use some of this SPSS stuff and those statistics and that kind of stuff. So let me show you guys a little bit more about that and kind of make it a little bit more real. So that way this demonstration, see how easy some of this stuff is, but also kind of clarify how we look at it. Because I started outlining some of the math that's involved. Might zoom out just a little bit. Get that board in the mix. One more still in the frame. Yes. Okay, cool. And so, like last time we were talking about, I was interested in the theater. This one, we're taking a little bit of a different perspective on it because we had questions about where people were afraid and that kind of thing. So, one of my questions related to this was that overarching measure for it was always bounded by one's own neighborhood at night. Right? And so one of the things I wanted to look at is I was in dealing with a neighborhood was, okay, what role does location have and what role does time frame have? And so I asked that similar question across multiple different places, time frames, and that kind of stuff. When we start getting into it, though, if we really want to know what fear is, well, any of you ever been afraid before? What's it? What is fear? Tell me what it is.
Like your heart accelerates. You feel like paranoid.
Mm-hmm. What else?
In some cases, you feel like you're being watched.
Good old paranoia. It's not paranoia if they really are out to come get you. Or if they really are out to get you, it's not paranoia. Okay. So I want to show you. Am I sharing my screen? I don't think I am. What's it say? Wasn't sure if we were having class as it's a holiday. Yeah, actually, I didn't realize that until today. Actually, in my last class, that was my second class. I mentioned it's Veterans Day. If I'd have realized that, I probably would have canceled class. I know some people have kids and such. That's like their schedule's awry right now. And sorry about that. Otherwise, I would have. But you'll like this. This one's going to be more fun because I'm going to show you how this stuff works. Because what's going to happen in the rest of this class, I'm going to show you guys how to develop projects and stuff like that, kind of set you on your own paths. For those of you who are graduate students, you've already submitted that assignment too. I'm working on those now. What you'll be getting back will kind of outline potential directions you could take those thoughts in terms of easily applicable research. And so I'll have at least one idea with a couple ideas I'll present to you. Like, you want to run with either of these, I can show you how to do it, kind of thing. And from there, it's like, oh, opportunities for presentations and such. And fun. But what I want to show you is this right here. It shares screen. You can still see me over in the corner. I'll probably move around a little bit and then I'll pop this out. So if I said painting man with apple. So you've all seen this picture before, right? I'll make it bigger. No, it's not gonna make it bigger. If I click it, will make it bigger. Give me full size. Not that big. That's still not right. Whatever. You guys have seen pictures like that before, though, right? You ever seen pictures like that before? This one's only $13,000. Well, 14 really. Just under 14. Right? So there are common pictures related to this. One I'm used to seeing usually has red apple, if I remember correctly. But I might just be remembering that in my own. Yeah, I guess it's green. So there's one with the red apple, but no, that's not what I'm thinking of. What this is yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's I didn't say it, but that's cool. Yeah. This is representation for what we see. Anytime we look anywhere, we don't really see much other than what's right in front of our faces, right? It's the same way with this data. It's the same way anytime we look at something. And that's one of the big things I want to see people change in terms of class stuff. It's this thing is a change in perspective. Anytime you start dealing with data, what it is you're trying to take a group of people and collapse it down to where it's easily to understand as a single person. It's not that easy, but there are ways that we do it. And so one of the easy ways that we start doing it is we start moving into those methodological processes, the analyses, I should say. Let me pause the screen share so you can see a little bit more. Boom. Boom. There. All right, so I'll move over here. And so anytime that we have that, like we'll have that question, measuring fear for a group of people, right? Now, if I go over here and I say, where's my overarching one? How long do you live on campus? How safe do you feel? Boom, right here. I get a bunch of 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. Right? So if I read that, does this have yep, this one actually does have the coding in there, right? So it'll show me very safe, neither safe or unsafe, those types of things. Let me share this so you guys can see it a little bit better online. Okay, there you go. So if I click this button right here, you'll see a number. If I click it here, it'll say very safe, neither safe, very safe, moderately unsafe. And so if I click into this, that's this question right here. It has those codes there. Very safe, moderately safe, so on and so forth. So anytime that we have a measure, we can put a number to. There's a few different processes that we do. Some are pretty standard. And so I'll start with some of them right here. Anytime we get into research itself, usually it starts with like one formative idea, right? We've played with a few, then some of those you guys might pick up, some of those you might go in a different what see how that fleshes out, how you guys want to attach to, because I'll give you a few options, probably next class. Whatever you do, you'll measure it some way. And that's going to be a number, right? And so if I were reading these across, I can see, okay, that first measure for we'll put X here, but it's really your dependent variable, is going to be whatever that value is, right? Person 2 is going to have this other value. Person 3. And so you get through all of them, right? And you can read it like a book. When you do that in your mind, you'll keep in some of that information, right? The numbers I saw there, they ranged from these numbers 1 through 5 are very safe, very unsafe, if you're reading it like using words. I saw a lot more 5s, it seems like, than I saw 3s. I didn't see very many 2s or 1s, so it must be a pretty safe place. You know, that's kind of if you read a textbook, if you read a book for pleasure, that's kind of what you take from it, like a generalized feeling or something like that. This is closer to accounting in some ways because we get real specific with those numbers. So it's like I don't just have that general idea from it. It's good to read it that way though, so that way you know if what you're looking at is correct. So you can read it, analyze it, see if your analysis worked correctly. By the time you get to the end, you can sum these up and end up with your average score, right? It's always like an X with a little hash over it, right? And so if we're trying to understand this one thing better, well, I take that average and I subtract it out from each of these values for all of them, right? And so if this one was the average is 3.5, this one's 5, I have 1.5. This next one, it'll be 2.5, or actually because the other direction says it's just 0.5, right? And so you go through all those, you end up with the sum of differences here, right? What have you just done? Think back to the apple, right? You've taken that center point and you start identifying the edges for it. So now you start to see around it a little bit better what's in it, right? This one's going to be so much positive. This one out here is going to be a negative 1, 3.5 or 2.5. Let's say it's a 1, right? You go through all of these and you sum them together, you end up with this same value, right? It'll end up to 0 because you'll have it averages out. This number's how many high, this number's how many low. It's a scale, it's a balancing thing, right? So if you have your average at 0 on either side to get that average, you just add up those differences, they'll balance out, which is why they bring in the square. The reason they do that is all your negative numbers become positive. Right? Another way that they sometimes do it, you won't see this very often, they'll actually use the, this is the math part, you have to hate that. Absolute values will get you the same kind of figure, but it's called a little bit different. They use different math. And so you can still see the sum total of differences here. That's called squared variance. How much it varies. Quite literally, it's in the word, right? This is how much the thing varies. You take this number and you give it the square root, you get that standard deviation, right? Here's your bell curve. Here are your standard scores. This is 33%, this is 33%, this is whatever it is, another 15, something like that. I'd have to do them to look at the numbers again, but it's something like that. Right? What percentage are within each of these? So you can split it off pretty quickly and see how it breaks up. Standardized, which means all of your variables will have the same kinds of measures, so all your variables are now comparable. With that standard deviation and the variance, either of those are the same kind of numbers. That mean, you get that picture of what this thing is in your head. Right? So you understand what that concept actually looks like. And so there's a few different ways you can do it. Like I can come over here and share the screen. See if I can make it a little bit bigger. Does it do? No, it doesn't do that. So it'll be small font. Sorry about that. But if I come over and I say, okay, I want to analyze the descriptives for Q22, 1 through 5. Variance, range, kurtosis, skew. Boom. Okay. Now, if I look at these, what you'll see, right here's it gives you an output. This graph is a summary for that singular variable. Each of these singular variables, right? So each one of these rows is a variable. This first one, 5 a.m. 800 people almost took it. Range is 1 to 4. Well, 1 to 5, so it's 4-unit range. Mean 2.37, 1.65, 1.71, 2.89, 3.73. Right? Just by looking at this first one, what kind of conclusions can we come to? The average score here in this group for that 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. panel, that time frame, is, well, if 1 is very unsafe and 5 is very safe, they're skewing a little bit towards that negative side. They've moved a little bit towards the negative. 3 would be, hey, it's perfectly neutral, right? Oh, no, I got that backwards. So lower numbers. This is how, let me see, how safe. Yeah, so higher would be more safe or is less safe. That's the problem with this. You have to make sure you have it coded the right way, because if you don't, I did it backwards. 1 is very safe. 5 is very unsafe. So if you don't keep your directions the same way, you write it up wrong or interpret it wrong. So 1 is very safe, very unsafe is 5. So that means back over here. Where'd it go? Oh, right here. So that 2.37 is actually a bit positive, because 3 would still be in the middle. If it went higher, it's actually less safe. So these are safe time frames. Here's where it starts to move closer to 3. Here's where it went negative overnight. People were more afraid overnight. If you look at the variation, how wide that is, right? This number and these numbers, these are smaller than those numbers, which means there's less consistency there, meaning the variation there is greater. What people see when they encounter fear in those situations, there are more consistency during the day than at night. Skew and kurtosis, those are those, skew is how off to the side it is. Kurtosis is how flat or how tall, right? You can see this one's fairly normal. This one's a little skewed and looks to be pretty tall. This one's fairly normal, fairly normal, fairly normal. So if I went here, I can actually go and do this. Graph, chart builder. Okay, don't care. Show me the chart builder. Let's grab that. And I'm going to grab this question right here. Boom. Okay. See it right there? Almost normally distributed, and it has that positive skew where that tail goes off. All right, if I do the next one, don't show me that again. All right, we'll get rid of that one. Keep showing me. Nope, that was the right one. Q22.2. 9 a.m. See how it changed? Now it's that big spike. Everyone feels real safe in the middle of the day. Is it any different for the next time frame? I don't know. Let's take a look. Get rid of this one. Go to the next one. Still positive. Basically the same for those two. I go to that next time frame. 2.3. Nope, that's the same one. Get rid of that one. Ooh, that one's different. Now, if we go back and we look at this, way back here at the top, at 5 p.m. time frame, it says your average here, real close to that middle. Your skew, normal. Kurtosis is a little high, a little flat, but not way extreme or anything. you wouldn't necessarily know that this thing looked like that without actually looking at the graph, right? Or doing the frequencies, right? That's something you'd call multimodal. And what that means is you have basically two groups of people, two divergent opinions that kind of overlap there. Looks to be coming through. That next one, you see something different. I'll come down here to this very last one. Right here. Everything's gone negative. Yeah. Right? And so what you have here is, this is for the university itself. And so you think about if it were this whole territory, in general, people are going to be looking at it in one way. Okay. Do you actually have to be there during any of those times? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. You live on campus, you're there, right? You're a night student. That last time frame where it had those two spikes. Some of those are those people. Is that what's causing that? Is that associated with that? How would you tell? Well, next thing you'd want to look at is what does that variable look like whenever I take a look at that? So if we look at descriptives, we'll say, move all these back over. Get the other names, make it big so you guys can see it. Boop. Boom. All right, so we have, how often do you walk on campus? Let's try another one. Are you a student? Are you an employee? Okay. Different numbers there. How often you walk on campus? By 800. Mean there is 2. So know what that means. You have to go back over here and look over here. So that's going to be, you frequently walk on campus? No, most people don't. Right? Is that what we're gathering? I hate when it does that. No? So 2.9. This one you'd really want to reformat since it's dichotomous, because that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, you can't interpret that number if it's a yes, no. No, that's a do. How often do you walk here? That's a different question. Do you walk? Do. How often? Here we go. That's what it is. 5 times 2, 1, 3. So they said 2.9. So on average between 2 and once kind of thing. Back over the, get that off here. Current student, yes, no. Employee of university, yes, no. Okay. So 80% and 25%, right? So 80% students, 25%. Ooh, that's actually not going to be that. That's going to be a multiple list. That one might be too. Let's take a look. If those are dichotomized, you'll get one number. If they're spread across those levels, you get a different. Right? Am I a student? Yes. Full-time, part-time? No. So what you'd want to look there is you'd actually get a different picture if you go up here and grab the graphs. Bring that down. That's going to be display variable names. Race, ethnicity. Are you a current student? Boom. How's that one? Right? So between those two, you get quite a bit of people. Some who are no. That's not what I want to do. That back there. Whatever. Get that thing out here. I don't need it. Next up, graphs. So that was students. What about employees? Own household income. Right here. Boom. Okay. A lot of different options there. So let's go see what those relate to. Come on. Current employee. Yes, professor. Yes, staff. Yes, part-time. Yes, extra labor. Yes, work study. No, not a current employee. Yes, instructor. Yes, lecturer. I guess that'd be adjunct. Employee, 7. So get over here. That 7th one's the biggest one here. Of course, you stack all those other up, it's going to rival. So we know something about those different variables. What do you think happens with correlation? Okay. To some degree, we can graph that out. To some degree, you're playing with images that look something like hit by this marker. Let's get a different one. Maybe one, two, one. Good. Yeah. Good. All right. So this is basically whatever your variable is, and this is just your number, right? So I have group 1, group 2, group 3, and the number of people in each of those groups. Right? And it may look like that, or it may not, like some of these don't. This is sphere. Now I want to look at sphere by students. Sphere for employees. Right? Many different ways you can look at it. Many different ways you can cut it. Think of all those categories there. Right? If you're going to do a correlation, though, you do the same thing. Correlation, right? You have your categories here, whatever they may be, right? You have your people here. What happens when you merge the two together is you might have some people that are here that are actually over here. So you might have a dot over here, you might have a dot way up. And so you get to track out and see how those things readjust. Right? So if I did that, I could go like this. I'm going to go correlate by variable because there's 2 variables. And we'll say, we'll just take that first one and we'll take and my current employee and my current student. Tell the student first. I did. Good. Boom. That gives you a little thing here. Okay, so correlation between being safe and being a student, negative. Being an employee and feeling safe is positive. So what does that mean? When we look at the direction that those numbers move, what does it do? So if I come over here and look at this and I say, okay, am I a student at this university? Okay, so that's one that how close a student they are to some degree is represented by lower numbers. So the higher that number goes, the less of a student they are to some degree, right? That fear starts out with a low number, moves this way. So as this number increases, it becomes less safe. There's more fear there, right? As this number, let's no place there. As this number increases, you're less of a student. So if it's a negative, that means as one of those is going down, the other one's going up. So as the person's a student, they'll have a higher level of fear than if they're not. They're full-time, they'll have a higher level of fear than those who aren't, or those who are not students at all. Ooh, pulled up the wrong one for that. I want to show you this part right here. Okay, so I'll give you direction. That'll give you size. Those dots there, though, that's statistical significance. That means it actually means something. So that first number right there we're talking about, that doesn't mean anything. It's not, one, it's not very big. But 2, it's not significant. It has no effect. So that means fear is independent of that. That means when you look at this correlation of it, there's no series of dots here that makes any sense. It's going to look like a line. Right? You look at this one right here, current employee and feelings of safety. That one's positive and significant. So if we look at that one, employee, where was that one? Student, employee. So this one you really want to recode to some degree, because right here is your 0, and these don't make sense. So that one we'd have to change before we analyze it. But if it were set up right, what you'd see here is that this number here would be indicating that, yeah, as they become higher in rank, here, this one's becoming higher. So more fear as they move away from being an employee. That's interesting. So the more familiar they are at this level, the less afraid they are. So you got things moving in different directions, right? Right here, 67% negative. Current student versus current employee. That means there that those are not quite as low to be considered multicollinearity, but basically you're getting pretty exclusive, right? That only 33% overlap here. 33% of your employees are also students. The other 67% are not. Right? That's if that were to hold up. And so you get to start to see how these things move around to some degree. That's what this is. The next step from here. Now, this. That's the crappy one. The rest I can get on. Just let that fall. Yeah. You just verified a relationship, right? Yeah. Direction, magnitude, significance. Pops up like this. If you've got it set up, the numbers right, it's as easy to click through as these buttons, right? You can display it this way. One step out from there is what you'll be finding in the stuff that you guys read in terms of like academic articles. When you start getting in the methods section, basically they do the same thing, but rather than just using one, you added multiple. And so instead of it being like this, it's like this number line right here is actually all of these things together. And so you pull in all of those variables simultaneously. And that's when you start getting into regression. That's the simple regression that you start out with kind of thing. Where you're pulling in. Okay, this is how much of a relationship these two things have together, right? There's a let's say if it were set up a little bit differently, we use the one for years. Like if I use years for students by correlate hours walking, student classification, different picture, right? So what we'd see here is that's significant and it's increasing. So for each year of increase, what we'd see here is a what? 10% increase in fear levels if it worked like a real number. There's a 10% increase for each unit. Now, if I were to add in age and some of those other factors, that number will go down because you have other variables in here that will predict it better in here, right? So as you use these things together, you have more predictive power. And so there's a balancing act with those games. That's the numbers. That's why they talked about the relationship between N, the relationship between your what- your N, your variance, your statistical significance, all those things. That's why. Program does all that stuff for you. It does it really, really quickly because before you'd have to go through and manually calculate, okay, this is the mean. Now I'm going to go through and make all those steps where it's subtract out the mean, all that stuff. That's before you even get to this kind of thing. Makes it extremely fast. Problem is, though, is you've got to get it, your data set to where it looks something like this, right? And so to do that, that's its own little process. And so we started on that a little bit with first assignment. I had to pull the data for missing children. And so I'll show you a little bit about how that stuff works. And then privacy matters to you. Oh, okay, cool. Ooh, I didn't show you this stuff. So what's really interesting about this program is it looks a lot like Excel. I think I mentioned that to you before, right? And of course, this is the Word document. This is really easy. But this other program, it looks like Excel, basically, except for you've got this screen, and of course, a lot of different functions here. It runs a lot like Excel, but where it diverts out a little bit, like all of those steps I was taking earlier, where I say, I want to build a chart, and I want to have it set up like this. Pressing this button, okay. If I press paste, watch what happens. Boom. A new screen pops up. So this program, what it will do is, depending on how you're using it, have probably about 3 screens open related to any one data set. This is called the syntax editor. Syntax is the language you're telling the program to, the steps you're telling it to take. So you can literally save the computer language to rerun all of your analyses just as you were before, right? So there's sort of like the difficulty associated with writing a term paper, right? You have a term paper, you take forever to write it out. You have it, you're done with it. If you need to rewrite that term paper, it's like years from now, it's like you won't have that same paper you can go and grab, right? I'm studying this topic. In 3 years, there's going to be a new data set that comes out, right? Do I need to go rewrite the book to write the book? No, I can just tell it, rerun these things, unless there's been some changes in variable names and things like that. Speaks just like you're talking to it. You can save all this stuff and get to do all kinds of things. We're changing numbers to new variables. Like this one's really long because I had to reformat all of it because it had a spatial component to it. And so you can see recodes. Let's see what else. Dichotomizing variables, right? You're worried about safe versus unsafe, fear versus feeling safe. It's like, how many different ways can you look at that? Depending on what you're trying to focus in on. If you have 5 points right there, high positive, middle positive, neutral, middle negative, high negative. Okay. You can say 3 doesn't exist. Now you have positive and negative. You can consider it 0 on either the positive or the negative side, or you can just deal with one of those extremes. Pull out the highest levels of fear, identify who is our population that has the highest levels of fear. How you do that math is determined by how you want to look at it. What exactly does you're focusing in on? And that's kind of the interesting about this process is if you do it right, you'll flush out the entire project kind of thing, but you'll actually have it where you can move things in multiple directions. And it's that overlap that pulls out the really interesting things, right? It's not until you slice open what this variable is actually doing that I can take it and see how it relates to another variable. It's not the numbers themselves, but those relationships that are hidden inside. And this is the knife that we use to cut into it, right? When we start adding in new information, it's like shuffling the deck. And each time you shuffle it, it takes a new shape. And so we're tracking how those movements take place as you're adding variables to some degree, how those shapes change. Okay. And so as you're doing this with your topics and such, is there any other things I want to show you? Because there's all other things I have in here too. Let's go to variable view. So I can show you some of the other stuff that works out for surveys. That logic, it's like you have to stop and think about how questions can fit together. Example. I was talking to someone over the weekend. They're actually a student here. I found out. In doing so, person said, okay, what year of school are you in? Okay, such and such year. Okay, how old are you again? Oh, such and such. Okay, so were you born in the later half of the year? Yeah. Okay, so that's why there's a, standard age for this is this. There's a little bit of a divergence here. So is that like the birth timing thing? You're born later half the year? Yes. So now I know a good idea. I've already narrowed down the time for your birth to a series of about 3 months. All right. And that's just by knowing, oh, you're what age and in what grade. Right. Not certain because there's an amount of probability in there. But if you think about it, you can start overlapping those things. It's the same concept that was behind, like, okay, we cared about students or employees. What is it we're actually caring about here? Familiarity, right? Those are two different perspectives, two different places, two different areas of activity, two widely different groups of people. What other things could affect someone's fear levels? Okay, so if we've got the fact that they're associated with campus or actually on campus, a student or not, I don't know. What other things can affect it? If you look at employee status, it's like how much of that's going to also correlate to income, right? Those different ranks will correlate to income to some degree. You start dealing with the income, now you're dealing with a different set. Are you driven by fear here or fear at home? Right? Maybe you don't live in the nicest area because you're not making very much money, and that's going to drive up your fear everywhere. So there's a whole bunch of things you can test for. It's just what is it specifically you want to look for, and then seeing how the pieces you can get them to fit together. And so it's a lot of fun. Let's see here. What was I going to show you next? I've got fear. I'm not employees. Some other fleeting thought. What is the logic? I got some notes over here. Data handling results. Yes. Survey development. That's what that's like. Okay. So one of the things that the book will tell you about as you read it, like survey development, the different formats of questions, right? We talk about levels of measurement and those types of things and how they relate. Your levels of measurement directly relate to the type of math you can use on it and the meaning behind the numbers. And you can say you can flip those meanings around just by changing a word or by changing your numbers associated with those words and that kind of thing. When we're asking questions, though, how we ask them, I mentioned before the order in which we ask them, also how we present them. So if I start talking about matrix questions, you all have seen those before. That's going to be those big grids where here's a whole bunch of boxes. Everything's going to fit with the same kind of scale. That's like that 1 to 5 or something like that. You also have other types of questions you can work in. We talked about the difference between open and closed-ended questions. Have we talked about the difference between open and closed-ended questions? Okay, good. What you get here, contingency questions. And we talk about contingency questions. Does that sound familiar? Okay. So those are going to be things like your victimization stuff. So if I get down here into the victimization section, keep moving. Right here. Victim. Up to the start of it right here. A lot of questions here. You can see how many questions are. These are only 2. There we go. It doesn't show me there. I'll go back to here.
We'll get this done quick and we'll get you up there and start getting you in front of the judge. Get back out.
Make that small. Make everything large. I just want to make this one large. Boom.
Try to hide, huh?
This down. Boom. There we go. No longer making noise. All right. So if you look at this, you'll see how safe do you feel? That's that section. Burglary, vandalism, car theft, robbery, assault. All of these different types. So this is actually a single question, right? This isn't, what is it, 10? I don't know, they're kind of out of order. That's actually just one question. That's one of those contingency questions where it's, okay, here's going to be the question, here's a list, indicate which ones. So depending on the data set you get, if you run it yourself or wherever you get it, it'll come in any number of forms. Ideally, it comes in something where it's coded correctly. What this one did is it coded each of those into the number 1, right? And if I come over here, it's going to show me, let's do it this way, sort of descending, right? It'll show me those phrases or those numbers. Now, if I wanted to collapse that back down into a single variable, it's like, how many different ways do I want to look at it? How do I want the number of types of victimizations that they had? I can get that from adding that up one way. But I just want the fact that they're a victim to any crime whatsoever. That's a different math, right? Is this above 1? Is it above 1? There you go. Is it one where I want to sort these in any particular way? Subsequent questions only get presented after they've answered these questions. And so you end up with a subgroup here. And so not everybody will get those questions, so they'll have lower numbers. Will it have a bearing here? Well, on the outset, we start looking at is that dichotomy, victimization versus not. So you add that in. And as you add these things in, that resolution and the more accurate number for the effect size something has is represented. And so you can kind of see the effect of, okay, was this a student or an employee? Was it an effect from the fact, is it associated with the fact that they're on campus or not? And to what degree? Now you're getting into real numbers. You can actually see the effects that these things have. So if we were to go and say, okay, this was year 1, year 2, we're going to make changes. Year 3, we're going to survey them again, right? In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to make some changes in terms of, I don't know, the buildings that had the highest levels of fear. We're going to dress them up a new way or something, add a new fence, right? Go back and survey them again and see if there's been a change, see if that actually had an effect. It all starts first putting it to numbers and then seeing what things actually do. Basically, what this ends up presenting to you is a series of numbers that one will account to this, then it has this kind of linear kind of pattern. Once you have that, you can move into other patterns too. It's just those are where they start from there. And we'll start talking about probabilities and such after that. Save contents. No, I don't care what. Let's do this. Get rid of that. Go back to that picture. Yeah. And so basically what you get with this is form. How would I want to put this? Let me think about that for a second, because there's a phrase I want to get here for that. You're giving form to something that's abstract in nature, right? These are only concepts. These aren't necessarily tangible things. You get people's responses, right? So we're trying to get to that abstraction behind it, the truth of the matter, what things really are. This is one of those processes and a vital one. That depiction of a line that works really, really good for numbers that are like your interval and ratio levels. Your other types of measures, that would be like ordinal and nominal. You're only talking odds there, so it's probabilities. And when it comes into the probabilities, realize that when we start talking about that, it's sort of like taking one of these and when you flip, right? What are the odds you're going to get heads or tail? Yeah. Okay. And so another way to look at those numbers that it gives you for those values, how much weight you're putting on either side of the coin. So that's going to change how it moves. It's going to change your results. It's the same thing with the linear stuff. If you look at it like weight you're giving to that subject, how important it actually is. That's what you're saying there. And so it's like when we start moving into the ordinal stuff, basically what you get there is it's sort of like you're dealing with dice, right? Casinos nearby, right? Loaded dice. How much are they loaded in what ways, right? That's what you're figuring out there. Usually odds is going to come up with heads every single time, or this is the number, snake eyes, I'm going to get those, right? And so that's literally what we're figuring out. It's the same, it's built off the same kind of math. And if you can do it for random, you can do it for stuff that's not random. And so just figure out what it is that we're trying to figure out and how you want to look at it. And to some degree, just doing that kind of points you right in the direction of what you're going to do next. And so I'll show you how that stuff works next time with the stuff that interests you in assignment 2. And if you guys still have any ideas when we come to class next time, what I'll do is I'll send out probably another email in advance of class ideas for different topics. We'll go through one by one, and we'll start shooting those around and see what develops from there. Cool. All right. With that, have a great day, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Have a beautiful day. Hopefully it's gotten nice and warm out there. Take care.